Hey folks, my name's Rene Enriquez, and you are watching Uncensored.
This is Rene Enriquez. Nickname Bootser. Blackhand of the Mexican Mafia. Prison gang politics.
Hey folks, my name's Rene Enriquez, and you are watching Uncensored. Well, today, folks, we're going to do something just a little bit different. We're going to profile Robert Ruiz, aka Chino Peanut Butter. You know, not many people have covered Chino extensively, but I have so much material on Chino that I think we're going to take this incrementally and do a step by step. And I think that'll be beneficial for everybody because you get inside look at Chino and who he was as an individual, how he lived his life, how he actually beat his sentence and got released under Prop 36. There's a lot to unpack here. So let's start it like how he got his nickname. You know, his name was Chino, and he got that at a very young age by his family because of the shape of his eyes. He was raised in the Maravilla projects. Chino's father was Henry Ruiz. He spent the majority of his life in prison. Chino did not meet his father until he was about 13 years old, believe it or not. And Chino joined the barrio Lomita Maravilla at about 14 years old. And he first went to prison around 1961. Henry Ruiz, his father, was a prolific handball player. Like he was on the handball courts at Folsom, everywhere he was at, and he was well known by the Cardenales. It was actually a camarada. He was actually asked to be made a member later on in life, but he declined. But Henry's father had a specific item that he would gamble at the handball courts. I heard in one past recounting of Chino that he got his name because he once told somebody, "My name is Ruiz," like Reese's peanut butter cups, and that's how it stuck, right? Peanut butter, but it wasn't that. Um, Chino got the name from his father. Actually, it was passed on to him because his father would gamble jars of peanut butter on the handball court. So Henry Ruiz, his father, became known as Peanut Butter, and it became a popular name. And Henry Ruiz was friends with multiple cardenales like Joe Morgan, whom he affectionately called Jose, but he declined becoming a cardenal in the 1990s. It was Benjamin Peters, my crimey, Benjamin Topo Peters, that learned that Chino Ruiz was the son of Henry Ruiz. And it was Topo that began calling him Little Peanut Butter. And eventually that was shortened to Peanut Butter. So that's how he got his name. I mean, I heard a couple different versions of how he got his name, and none of them are true. That is the actual true story. Um, but Chino was first offered membership in 1971, but declined. But then he was made in 73 by Manuel Mapa Lopez from up north. I don't know which specific hood he was, but here's a picture of him here. And Chino was around for years, you know, since 73. You know, that's 73, 83, 93, 2003, 2013, 2020. That's 50 years. That's like 50 something years that he was a member, right? And we all know that Chino was in Pelican Bay State Prison, right? We all know he was there. He went there for a robbery, and they doubled up his sentence for I think it was 50 to life. But Chino had a seventh grade GPL, right? Uh, and he did really terrible at any assignment going back to 1963, I believe it was. Here's a chrono that is from CTF Central. And this is when the inmates wrote chronos. The clerks wrote chronos, right? We typed them out on typewriters. And the date on this specific chrono is 11/365. And it says comments S seen by disciplinary committee after receiving a CDC 115 due to use of stimulants and sedatives, sniffing. Committee discussed this with S his past and present behavior in regards to his sniffing activities and behavior in general. Noted was chrono submitted by Mr. F. A. Dennis Foreman, Clothing Factory, on 10/22/65, where S was apprehended for suspicion of sniffing. However, successfully avoided his supervisors and apparently covered his sniffing activities at that time. They would document everything in these CDC 128s, right? And that's what you're looking at here is a CDC 128. What a lot of people don't know was that Chino would huff the carbon tech. It was a cleaning solvent for dry cleaning, right? But that was a huge thing in San Quentin and Folsom where they had dry cleaning factories and industries, right? So Chino was a prolific sniffer. He would huff this stuff and use drugs. And he had a real serious disciplinary history in CDC. The next chrono that we look at is dated 11/11/65. This is to confirm above assignment of subject primarily because of compulsive sniffing activities. And fact is, he has a management problem in our general population. Needs to establish stability. Noted is long disciplinary history. This was kind of the elemental way or the fundamental way that they would write chronos back in the day. And these are, decades and decades old, but a central file reflects everything, and nothing's ever omitted from a central file unless you somehow pull off a miraculous move and get something omitted and deleted from the file. Okay, so here is 4269, and this is still at CTF Central. That's Soledad for those of you not familiar with the acronym. It's at Central Training Facility at Soledad, California. And this is his custody close R, grade 2, next reclass 669, vocational porter, dropped from laundry. That was his problem in the laundry. He'd get that carbon tag and start sniffing it. But it says subject dropped from laundry after second incident wherein he was using his job for his own benefits. In the last case, he was found with some 14 T-shirts in his cell. So yeah, he was like a continuous disciplinary problem in CDCR, but all inmates are. Everybody has a hustle. He's probably jacking T-shirts and selling them to the homies or whatever it was. Everybody has a hustle, right? So they would document this behavior from him over and over again. A lot of people don't know that in the early years, Chino was actually stabbed. Chino was stabbed by black inmates. This was at a time when the guerra or the war was going on, and Chino and a camarada, a BGF, ran into the cell and stabbed him. In fact, I found some documentation in the central file that reflects just that. I'll pull that up right now. Oh, there's another one before we jump into that. He made a personal appearance before a committee on 4876, basis of a rules violation report where he's charged with assaulting the CO. So he had assaults. In fact, he caught another case while in Soledad for this. So he had a long history of assaulting COs. In fact, the chrono on 11/22/76 says S was placed in shoe on 11/8/76 by Lieutenant J. Vance, who indicated that his action was taken because of confidential information received to the effect that inmate Ruiz had made threats to kill a member of staff in the near future. Temporary segregation was approved by this committee on that date and again reaffirmed on 11/18/76. S made a personal appearance before committee today and stated he had not planned to assault or kill staff members. We do have confidential information from 3 sources indicating S was in fact planning to hit a staff member. So he went to the whole, he was like, that was the spot, like every other guy who was a rule violator in the prison. This was like a kind of repetitive thing. You go to the shoe, you get kicked out, you party for a little while, you go back. But there is a chrono that reflects that he was assaulted in Folsom State Prison, I believe in 1981, on the release, after being released from the shoe, when they started incrementally releasing guys out of the shoe into the general population. Chino was part of that first wave. And this was in the midst of the war. Chino and his cellie were placed in orientation in one block, and he was stabbed in A section of one block multiple times. And that's documented in this chrono here. But a lot of people didn't know that Chino was assaulted by the BGF. And it kind of intensified the war. They hit a carnal. BGF hit a carnal, right? And retaliation was taken. But most people know Chino from Pelican Bay. I met him there. And it was a brief meeting in passing. I saw him in the library. Hey, Chino, I'm Rene. How you doing, brother? Blah, blah, blah. That's it. And that's how you usually meet people in Pelican Bay. But Chino pulled off a miracle while in Pelican Bay State Prison. He appealed to have his sentence reduced. I think he had 50 to life, and he had it reduced to 25 to life. But in 2012, California voters passed Proposition 36, which called for resentencing of individuals who were in custody on their third strike, therefore serving a life sentence. Chino was one of those guys. If their third strike was violent or dangerous charge, the inmates was not. If their charge was not violent or dangerous, any inmate would be qualified to resentencing if the court found that they were no longer dangerous to society. Chino's third strike, the one he received the extensive life sentence for, possession of heroin in his bloodstream, constructive possession. He first went to prison for robberies, and he did about 15 years. While down in Chino State Prison, Chino, due to be paroled, he was being released from parole in 1999. You go to pre-release. You return as part of a statute that was created for CDC inmates after Scully Bob eliminated a patrol officer in Northern California immediately after his parole. CDC passed a policy and made it part legislature that inmates in California are returned to the county of commitment, right? So here, Chino is returned to Chino. And while in the hole, somebody sends him like a dime paper of heroin. And when he's down there, somebody sends him this paper. He's getting ready for release. He has no family. He has no resources. He's getting thrown out of the streets after over a decade in prison for robberies. He does the heroin. He injects it, right? Like I said, at the time, he didn't have anywhere to parole to. He was going to self-parole. He didn't have much money to sustain himself. And because he had been sober for so long, when he did that dime paper, he overdosed. He overdosed in Chino State Prison. Somebody called man down. They came and got him. They booked him for constructive possession of heroin in his bloodstream and was convicted to 55 years to life. And he was never supposed to get out of prison again. Chino was never supposed to get out of prison again. But lo and behold, Chino on his own researches the law and gets his sentence reduced. Not on that's just the first step, right? And on the second step, he appeals for sentence evaluation under Prop 36. And he's represented by an attorney who actually wins the case. In fact, let's pull up those transcripts right now. And they're not very extensive, right? But you'll see the fact that here's the cover sheet. Superior Court of State of California for the County of San Bernardino, the Honorable Michael A. Smith, Judge. Case number FSB 03373, pages 1 through 5. And the attorney was appointed to him, did a fine job. And for the people was Michael A. Ramos, District Attorney, represented by Jeffrey Goss, Deputy District Attorney. And I'll tell you, they did a piss poor job. They did a piss poor job in opposition to his parole. I mean, if I was looking at it from the spectrum of a prosecutor, I would have pulled out every 1030, every relevant 1030 within the last 90 days or the last 6 months, and I would have dumped all that into court. But they had no opposition, probably because they didn't really have anything of substance, right? They had the typical 1030s that he'd been identified as a Mexican Mafia member, but nobody could implicate him in current dangerous behavior. And that's the real basis of a Prop 36 sentence recall, right? They have to prove current dangerousness. The district attorney didn't ask for a CRA, a clinical risk assessment, which would have been one of the first things I did, and had him gauge, what level of threat he posed. But let's go through the transcripts real quick, because it's a pretty simple hearing, and he pulls off a miracle here. San Bernardino, Friday, January 10th, 2014. Department 19, Honorable Michael A. Smith, Judge. The defendant, Robert Ruiz, is present with counsel. His attorney at law. Jeffrey Goss is present, representing the people of the state of California. Teresa Christine Wolf is the CSR, official court reporter. The bailiff come to order. Court is now in session. The court, all right. We call the matter of the people versus Robert Ruiz. Mr. Ruiz is present in custody with counsel. The district attorney is present. Counsel, want to state your appearances for the record? Counsel for defendant, on behalf of Mr. Ruiz, who is present before the court in custody. Mr. Goss, Mr. Goss for the people. The court. All right, this matter is on for today for regarding defendant's petition for resentencing under Penal Code Section 1170.126, the three strikes revision, resentencing revision law. We determined the defendant appears to be statutorily eligible for resentencing based on his commitment offense and the alleged strikes. The district attorney originally objected to the release on the grounds that the defendant currently and continues to pose an unreasonable risk of dangerousness to the community, and it was set for further hearing on that issue. But I understand the district attorney does not have any, at least, recent evidence to present on that issue. Is that correct? Mr. Goss. That is correct, Your Honor. We had a conference in chambers for the benefit of counsel to let him know what our opposition was. I have a central file for Mr. Ruiz. It is replete with confidential report after confidential report stating Mr. Ruiz's connection as a validated member of the Mexican Mafia. However, he has been locked up in the shoe for at least the last 30 years, if not 40 years, and has not had an opportunity to assault anybody. Also, given his age of 70, all his physical and violent contacts is basically in the 60s and 70s with assaults on guards, etc. But after early 1980s, there is no indication in the central file of any assault on staff. He hasn't been the most cooperative person in the world, and he's still using illicit substances, sniffing, drinking, but there is no assaultive behavior. I was in contact with Pelican Bay a number of times by email to try to get the information that I can. They have been not very cooperative in releasing any information or even contacting me despite my efforts. And it's basically the people's position that based, and it's probably not statutorily reason or a legal reason, but based on his membership in the Mexican Mafia, he poses a significant risk to society if he is released. But I have nothing to except the central file, no actual violence in the last 30 years. Submit. Now, this is me speaking here, right? That's a pretty weak argument for the people, for the prosecution, right? The prosecution basically laid down. It says, hey, I got nothing. Pelican Bay wouldn't cooperate with me. All I got is a central file in 1030s, and that's all they used, right? And the court then says, okay. The court responds, all right, well, given that there's no demonstrated acts of violence for at least 30-year period, understanding that maybe a good part of that is where Mr. Ruiz has been incarcerated, it appears that there's not sufficient basis at this time for the court to be able to make the finding that the defendant currently poses an unreasonable risk of dangerousness to the community. If it is established he is still an active member of the Mexican Mafia, that might change things a little bit, but that's somewhat counterbalanced by his age of 70 years old. I'm guessing that the days of street violence are probably behind you at this point. That's him posing a question to Chino. And Chino responds, mm-hmm. The court then responds, so the court will find the defendant is statutorily eligible for resentencing. That's it right there, folks. The court finds he's statutorily eligible. Not finished yet, because the judge can say, well, it's my discretion to resentence you or not, and I choose to resentence you to 1 day minus what you have now. He could say, oh, I'm going to give you, you have 55 to life, I'm going to give you 54 to life. He can do whatever he wants. He's the judge. He's a Superior Court judge. He's wearing the silk robes. But the battle's won here. This battle is won, and it's miraculous, because Chino was never supposed to see daylight. Miracles happen, folks. Even for people that, are still involved in gangs, miracles happen, and this really was a legal miracle, because he's one of the very first guys that went up. Validated mob guy, has a long history of confidential information, long history of violence in the organization. So the court goes on, and so the court finds at this point in time there's insufficient evidence for the court to find that the defendant currently poses unreasonable risk of dangerous to the community. The court will therefore grant the petition for resentencing and resentence Mr. Ruiz as follows. He had 2 counts of 4573.6 as his commitment offense. The attorney says, I believe so, yes, Your Honor. The court, okay, and that's 2, 3, 4? Mr. Goss, yes, it is. Okay, for the offense of possession of controlled substance in a jail or prison facility, violation of Penal Code 4573.6, the court will resentence the defendant to California State Prison for the aggravated term of 4 years. The two offenses were on separate occasions. The attorney responds, they were on the same occasion, Your Honor. The court, same occasion? Okay, then count two. For the additional offense of possession of a controlled substance in jail facility, violation of Penal Code Section 4573.6, the court will also sentence the defendant to California State Prison for the aggravated term of 4 years. That term is to be concurrent with the term imposed in count one. That 4-year term is doubled to 8 years due to the allegation of strikes. The total aggregate term of imprisonment is therefore 8 years. Against the 8-year sentence, the defendant is entitled to receive pre-sentence custody of 629 days, plus 314 days conduct, for a total of 943 days. Pre-sentence credit as the date of his original sentencing on June 12, 2001. The court will therefore find the defendant has served the entirety of his prison term and order that the defendant be released on case number FSB 03373. The court will impose an additional of the original findings and assessments that were opposed at the time of the original sentencing. Okay, so I'm assured you're going to be sent back to state prison. You have to be processed out from state prison. Chino again says, The court, so that usually takes anywhere from 30 to 60 days, okay? Chino responds, okay. The court, and then you should be released. Good luck. Chino says, thank you. The court says, don't come back. And Chino responds, oh, no, Your Honor. The court, all right. The defendant, all right, thank you. The attorney says, thank you, Your Honor. Whereas proceedings were concluded. This was the miracle that occurred for Chino and how he was released from prison. A lot of people don't know that one attorney assisted him in filing this petition for resentencing under 1170. This is the new law when it started changing, right? 1170, which is resentence, right? Recall of sentence. But he had a long history in the Bay, and it really wasn't that prolific of a mobster. I mean, when I saw him, I just thought, oh, this is an old veteran guy. He's one of the Mustache Pete's, right? And I gave my respect, like, hey, what's up, brother? My name's Rene. Like I told you, I saw him in the law library somewhere. I can't even remember where. But I saw him and spoke to him briefly. Knew who he was. Knew he was one of the OGs. And but he had a long history of drinking in Pelican Bay as well. I remember in one instance, he got into a fight with a cellie. And it was Flaco from Rivera. Flaco from Rivera was a good camarada. He was known to all of us, right? Real good dude. But he was receiving the TV guide. And he would give it out to the camaradas in the unit to check out. Everybody wanted to see the TV guide. So, Chino got upset one day and was upset with Flaco for not allowing him to see it first. So one thing that's known about Chino is he's a bad drunk, right? He gets drunk, he gets aggressive, and this occurred. During one of these occasions, him and his cellie, Flaco, got into a fight. Flaco beat Chino down and gave him 2 black eyes. And much to Chino's credit, Chino did not allow that to take flight in politics, right? When it came up, hey, this guy put his hands on a carnal, Chino voiced his opinion on the matter. Like, I got into a fight with him, he got the better of me, it's a done deal. And Flaco got a pass on that. Chino could have had him eliminated for raising his hands to a brother, because you just can't do that, right? And many cardenales, maybe even including myself, would have taken drastic action against Flaco. I'm not saying that I would have, but I'm saying that there are many cardenales that would have. But much to Chino's credit, he stood up for Flaco and made sure he didn't get hit. Flaco went on to a honor yard. I remember I was housed in Lancaster State Prison, level 4, and I was in the hole. One of the many occasions that I visited the hole there for somebody dropping a kite on me that I was going to get eliminated while on the PC yard. And I remember going to the A facility visiting room. They'd take you all the way across the prison from C or D facility where I was at. And I remember seeing Flaco. And I gave him a nod, he gave me a nod. And I knew he was on an honor yard, which is a quasi-PC yard, right? But he stated that he was in contact with numerous carnales, and that they knew he was on that yard, and he had their blessing, which was cool. I was happy for him that he was there. They had the dog program there. I used to walk by and see inmates with dogs, which I thought was fascinating. But Flaco was there, and he had survived that, and that's much, much to Chino's credit. It tells you the kind of guy he was, right? That he had integrity, that he accepted that loss with grace and dignity. Um, and we all know Chino was released after that. He was released immediately after that. But there's much more to this story, folks. There's much more to this story, and I don't want to give it all away too quick. You guys are way too spoiled already, and I just cannot have it. Cannot have it. Yeah, we got a bunch more. We got a bunch more coming to you. I just wanted to open up with this, a little brief thumbnail on profile for Chino. We're showing you some of the exhibits, the transcripts. We're showing you some of the chronos. We got a ton of stuff. And we're going to do Chino Week, all right? That's how it's starting off, folks. We're opening it up with that salvo. For those of you who don't know what a salvo is, it's a shot, right? It's a shot from a big gun. So I hope you enjoyed this piece. I hope you enjoyed going into the heart of this matter. We're gonna dissect this like this. We're gonna show you documents. We have recordings of Chino. We have a bunch of stuff that we're gonna bring forth. As always, like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit that notification bell. I know that YouTube has been kind of wonky with notifying you, but hit the notification bell, and we'll see you when we see you. All right, folks. Peace out. Stay safe.
This is Rene Enriquez. Nickname Boots.